everyone, and thank you, Rachel, for joining us today. So Rachel George is the Global Lead in Health System Advisory and Innovation at Salesforce. I've had the privilege of speaking with you one-on-one in the past, and I'd like for you to give an introduction to our audience here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ainsley, and thank you to the HITLAB for having me here. I am an internal medicine physician by background. I still practice clinically very intermittently, very rarely, and really because I went into medicine because I love taking care of patients. But my full-time job is in healthcare administration, and I've spent a lot of time over the last 20 years leading healthcare provider organizations. And over the last few years, I really looked at what's happening in healthcare technology and thought, that's where change is driving and moving so fast. And so let me really jump into what's happening in healthcare technology. And I've been with Salesforce, as Dan mentioned, for the last couple of years. Super excited to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, and again, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule. And on that topic of technology and healthcare and value-based care. So, as you mentioned, technology has been a driving force in healthcare transformation. So how do you see that technology and those advancements contributing to the implementation and the success of value-based care models?
Yeah, so remember that value-based care is basically doing two things simultaneously, right? It's providing incredibly high quality care while decreasing costs at the same time. And this can seem like an oxymoron, but that's because we've historically been focused on illness care instead of wellness care or prevention of illness care. And if we can truly make that shift from illness to wellness care, then improving quality while decreasing costs can just go hand in hand. And you can add just general prevention of illness in this category. And I think about what Angela just spoke about in the beginning of her presentation and her family story, where they were able to identify individuals with long QT syndrome. And think about how much morbidity and mortality were decreased just because we were proactive in identifying it and treating it before issues arose. And that's really the essence of value-based care. But in order to do this successfully, you really have to have a really full understanding of all of your data. And gosh, we don't have a lack of data in healthcare. We have data coming out of our eyeballs. However, we do have a lack of usable data. So advanced data analytics is critical. You have to be able to gather it, process it, analyze vast amounts of patients' data to identify patterns, predict outcomes, optimize treatment plans. And this is really one area where predictive AI becomes immensely useful. And as AI becomes better and increasingly more common, our ability to be successful in value-based care increases and becomes better and stronger.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, that value-based care heavily relies on data-driven insights for decision-making. So from your perspective, how can healthcare providers and systems better manage that overwhelming volume of data generated by various different sources in order to be able to drive more meaningful and actionable insights?
Yeah, and it's really not about having the data because we have the data. It's about having the metadata, right? The data about the data in a way that's easily accessible and kind of put in front of you in a way that you can understand. So what are the trends, not only for populations, which we talk about a lot, but for individuals? Is an individual's weight and fasting blood sugar slowly increasing in a way that no single value is setting off any alarms, but enough to be concerned that if the trend continues, the patient will be looking at a new diagnosis? So one of the challenges that we're having today is that there's so many sources of data. We have EMRs, in many cases, multiple EMRs. I am personally in 4 different EMRs, so multiple EMRs for a single patient. We have, RPMs and the many wearables that exist today. But we also have information about social determinants of health, including where a person lives and whether they live in a food desert or not. And so in order to be successful in value-based care, we have to have all of that data, and we have to look at it through a single pane of glass that is easily accessible to anyone who needs it without having to log into multiple databases or systems, and without having to do swivel chairing like we all talk about it in data management.
So it seems like what you're kind of touching on is that data overload almost. It seems like that can be a challenge. And do you know of any strategies or tools that healthcare professionals can use to almost filter or actually prioritize the more actionable insights from the abundance of available data?
Yeah, no, this is really where I see the opportunity of AI in healthcare taking hold first. There are really some very interesting clinical challenges that AI can help solve for, which, as a clinician, I get very excited about. For example, diagnosing rare diseases, which often go underdiagnosed because they are by definition rare and not what a clinician thinks of and or may understand. And while that's super interesting, I think the real opportunity of AI initially is managing the data and supporting things like value-based care. And in order to be successful, organizations need to make sure they have a really robust data strategy. Does your data talk to each other? One of the challenges and opportunities that we have right now is that there are so many healthcare organizations that are popping up everywhere, and so many data organizations, and there's so much happening, and they're all collecting different forms of data. But it doesn't matter unless the data talks to each other. Do you have a platform that can accept all types of data from different sources, including and not limited to multiple EMRs, RPMs, and other types of data like geodata or the research data that we were just talking about, that we can create what we call a customer 360 or patient 360, which is a full view of the patient. And once you have that data in a structured format, then you can expose it to an AI engine that can evaluate that data for you in order to create actionable insights that can be presented to your team proactively to ensure that the data doesn't just sit there, but is actually acted upon. And it's not reliant on an individual to go and find that trend or to find that issue or to figure it out on their own, but it's presented to them, and then it's just a matter of acting on it.
I love that. It's super important and innovative to think about how AI can potentially change this value-based care in the data world. And in terms of an actual example, have you seen the innovation of AI being used to successfully tackle these challenges? Or do you think this is more something in the future?
Yeah, so two things. Absolutely, the answer is it is happening now. It is happening in a lot of industries. It's not happening well enough in healthcare, in my personal opinion. And a lot of that has to do with, data not being able to talk to each other. This group and this network, which I love. I love this community that we've been able to build together. But I think we need to commit to making sure that we create and provide data that is interoperable, because regardless of our own need to advance our own organization, which is totally important. I mean, I understand that. We are, though, working in a healthcare environment, and we have to be willing and able to share our data and create things that are interoperable. And I think that's really important. And so that lack of interoperability right now is one of the biggest things that's hindering us. But I think that there is a ton of innovation happening to create platforms that are bringing it all together, and not only at Salesforce, but at other organizations. I mean, I don't want this to be a Salesforce message, because I think this is really a message for all healthcare organizations about how do you bring data together on a single platform. A lot of room to go in healthcare, but if you look at what Disney's doing. For goodness sakes, if you have a kid between the ages of 5 and 12, Disney knows everything about you, right? They have every piece of information about you and every member of your household. And if an organization like Disney can do that, we certainly need to do that. We need to do that even better in healthcare.
No, I love that analogy there, especially related to how we can use that in an AI and just hopefully be able to tailor, those tools better for better data utilization and interoperability. And just as like a wrap up question here, the success of value-based care relies on accurate data, but there are discrepancies and inconsistencies within that. So do you think technology or even AI as well can help ensure data accuracy and integrity, most importantly, to help drive reliable outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad we got to this question, because I think it's so incredibly important. So hopefully everyone has heard of some of the challenges of what are called LLMs, or large language models like ChatGPT, specifically around hallucinations. And if you're not aware, generative AI models that work on LLMs essentially try to create the next best word by looking at the entire world of information available on the internet. So if you're not aware of this already, let me be really clear and then say that there's no guarantee that the information that ChatGPT spits out, and I love ChatGPT, don't get me wrong, but there's no guarantee that that is accurate. And hallucination specifically refers to outright wrong information that can sometimes be generated. For example, made up trials, made up legal precedents. So in healthcare, we need to ensure that the data that these AI systems are learning on are based on accurate information and backed by real science and not pseudoscience. And we also have the real issue that a lot of historic knowledge in healthcare is really biased. For example, many systems still use different calculations for GFR, which is a measure of kidney function based on race. And what that does is it actually makes it harder for African Americans in the US to qualify for the transplant list. And I think that a majority of clinicians understand that this is completely faulty. However, I will tell you that one of the EMRs that I work in still gives me two different GFR numbers based on race. So it's still prevalent, very much prevalent today. And so this race-based faulty information permeates our healthcare information. So as we expand the use of AI in healthcare, how do we ensure that these biases aren't propagated, that they're actually mitigated? And so to answer your question, AI in healthcare needs to be trained on information that's accurate and needs to go beyond just LLMs to truly ensure that recommendations are accurate. And I think this is the opportunity that we all have as AI is growing in healthcare. As you know, we're really looking at about what this integration actually means. How are we ensuring that we are really creating a solution that is, you know, highly equitable, that is accurate, and so that it's learning on information that is true and not just on the entire wealth of information, because we all know just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true. Like, let's talk about the many things that are there. So how do we train AI in a way that makes sense? And I think this is why, you know, human intervention and what we all do today is going to really impact what's going to happen in the future.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those insights on that. Something I haven't even thought about is when we're building the AI, you know, the whole database and everything, that needs to be based on accurate and reliable information, or else the data and all the tools that AI can provide don't offer us anything at the end of the day.